Hello, this is Vincent. Welcome to Dogma Discussions. This channel is to discuss all kinds of dogma, normally religious dogma, but there's other dogma, especially right now with the pandemic and everything. There's lots of dogma out there. And what I wanted to talk about this time is it's the dogma of predestination versus free will. So if you like the video, hit the like button, hit subscribe, notification bell, and all that. Leave me a comment. That helps me out with the YouTube algorithms. And here we go. And I should explain, if you're a new listener, I have stories that I share, and then again, you're free to leave comments and discuss. I'd like to at one point do some live streams, but I'd need some more subscribers so that we could actually have people listening live on the live streams. So tell your friends, share the videos, or the audio of my videos, whatever you want to call them. And let's go. Here we go. The book of Proverbs says that the heart of a man plans his own way, but the Lord establishes his steps. Okay, but what does that mean? From a biblical perspective, it seems that these steps are the circumstances into which God places us. From a secular perspective, they are determined by randomness. For the sake of argument, I will consider these random circumstances to be the same as God establishing our steps. Regarding a person planning his or her own way, that sounds like free will. The difference in our own lives between what is determined and what is in our control has been pondered for millennia. In fact, struggling with this conflict seems to be innate to the human condition. So, how can we figure it out? Examining the lives of others is one way, and the Bible offers some great examples. If we consider biblical stories from a secular perspective, we see that once a person's circumstances have occurred, what happens next does indeed result from our own choices. Consider Samson, the long-haired Israeli Old Testament hero, whose extraordinary strength is due to being unshaven, a sign of his devotion to the Nazirite tradition. Since Samson was designated a Nazirite before he was born, this situation can be considered the establishment of his steps. Now, what about the expression of his free will? Well, Samson's story reminds me of the old Molly Hatchet song called Flirting with Disaster, of which a portion goes like this. And the way we run our lives, it makes no sense to me. I don't know about yourself or what you want to be, yeah. When we gamble with our time, we choose our destiny. I've always found Samson's decision to repeatedly play games with Delilah about the secret to his strength puzzling. On one occasion, he tells her that if bound with new, unused ropes, he will be as weak as any other man. So she binds him. The Philistines attack, and Samson easily defends himself against them. This pattern repeats until he finally reveals the true source of his strength. Thus, waiting until he is asleep, Delilah shears him. The Philistines attack, and unable to defend himself, he is captured, blinded, and enslaved. Yet, due to the inattention of his captors, once in chains, Samson's hair is allowed to grow back. Recognizing that enough of his strength is restored to take his revenge, he does, which ends his life as well as those of his enemies. Thus, Samson's story clearly illustrates the consequences of one's choices. He was a Nazarite by birth, which resulted in his great strength. But his own poor decisions led to his capture, torture, and eventual death. Conversely, the Old Testament tale of Naomi illustrates how one's choices can lead to restoration. To be sure, Naomi suffered many hardships, including being widowed, enduring famine, and the loss of her sons. In fact, Naomi's life is so bad that she asked to be called Mara, meaning bitter, versus Naomi, which means sweet and pleasant. She does have her daughter-in-law, Ruth, as a companion, but their circumstances are still dire. Truly, Naomi's steps are firmly established. Yet she doesn't give up and eventually finds an eligible bachelor for her daughter-in-law to marry, and he provides for both women. Now, the faithful might argue that God provided for Naomi, first Ruth, then the husband. If that is true, did God also kill Naomi's husband and sons and leave her destitute? For what purpose? To restore her and show his awesome power? Or is it more likely that the women experienced a string of unfortunate events, very common in the ancient world, and took advantage of the best opportunity available to them? Similarly, consider the resiliency of Rahab, generally agreed to have been a prostitute in Jericho. Since prostitution in the ancient world was an occupation usually foisted upon women of no options, we can presume that her steps were established outside of her free will. The reader meets Rahab when the two Israeli spies arrive to assess the military strength of the city prior to attacking. So, why did she choose to hide these men from the local authorities? According to the Bible, it's driven by her faith in God. Yet, from a humanist, non-spiritual perspective, there's a simpler answer. After revealing that she is aware of the Israelites' escape through the Red Sea and of other cities they had destroyed, she asked for preservation for herself and her family. The faithful argue that the point of the tale is to highlight God's ability to do his will, even through a flawed vessel. How open-minded. Yet it seems more likely that, while entertaining travelers, she had heard about the prowess of the Israeli army and made a calculated decision. If the Israelis had failed to conquer, would Rahab be in a worse position, since the spies were not found in her home? Nope. As Rahab demonstrates, success comes with acknowledging the realities of one's situation and acting accordingly. When I think about one's circumstances versus free will, my father immediately comes to mind. As a child, he barely survived the Great Depression. After being drafted into the Navy in World War II, he endured 6 major battles, being in some of the bloodiest conflicts in the Pacific Theater. As a result of his life experiences, he was a tough-minded guy, small in stature, but large in presence. Most of his life, he worked a blue-collar, physically taxing job. On Saturdays, he would fix our vehicles, do home repair, and on Sunday afternoons, enjoy a little repose in front of the TV. One particular Sunday, we were watching his favorite football team. Let me take you to that moment. It's halftime and a commercial for the U.S. Navy flashes across the screen. My father rarely talks about the war, but this time he points out something about the ship on the screen. So I decide to prod him. Father, what was the war like? Bad, son, bad. Were you afraid of dying? No, I knew that I would survive. How? I just knew. His brief response indicates that he's losing interest in the subject, but I have one more question. Father, did you hate the people you fought against? He is silent for a few moments, looking down at his hands before turning to me and responding, "You know, I lost some good friends in the war, but it's not the fault of the enemy. They were fighting for their country, just like I was." What? How can you feel that way about an enemy? Son, you may not be able to control your situation, he said, but control what you can. I was determined to survive and did everything in my power to protect myself and my men. I also chose not to hate. My father did not choose his lot in life, yet he definitely directed his own way. Reflecting on my father's words, I think about another biblical character, one who seemingly chose to hate. Consider Judas, famous as a betrayer of Christ. Being in Jesus' inner circle, one has to wonder why Judas would do such a thing. Luke tells us that the devil entered into him. And John says that Satan had put the idea in Judas's heart. Of course, the devil made him do it. On the other hand, Jesus himself says that the scripture had predicted the betrayal, referencing Psalms written centuries before. Yet, is it fair to think that Judas was just playing out the role in some ancient prophecy? Is that how God established his steps? Or is it more reasonable to think that random chance gave him the opportunity to be among Jesus' elite, and then Judas made his own decision? And not being able to live with it, he ended his own life. I currently sit in a coffee shop. As I look around, I see many people, some wearing expressions of happiness, others frustration, depression, or a myriad of other emotions. And I wonder what has happened to them outside of their own doing, and what choices they have made within their own control. While I ponder this, another wise saying from my father drifts into my consciousness. "You should never complain," he would say, chuckling, "for half the people to whom you complain don't care, and the other half are glad that whatever has happened to you has happened." He never did complain. He just made the best out of his station in life. God, fate, general randomness of the universe, whatever you call it, makes our steps. Yet, if we look at these stories from a non-spiritual perspective, we see that each person either improved or destroyed themselves by their own free will. For Naomi and Rahab, things turned out well. For Samson and Judas, not so much. The lesson then is to recognize when you're able to exercise control and then embrace those opportunities to make your life better. Okay, folks, that's my story for today. Thank you for listening. Again, please hit the like button, subscribe, leave me a comment, share the video, and I'll talk to you soon. Until next time, this is Vincent. Goodbye.